It's very nice to see you here. Obviously, you've got some pretty pretty good people that you're following. I was going to say boots to fill, but probably that's a bit inelegant for ladies, isn't it? So you say boots to fill. But obviously, you've got a very strong, broad CV, and the emphasis in recent years, I think, has been on safeguarding. So I think that's going to be useful. And I think it's probably very appropriate that the main item on our agenda today is one on safeguarding as well. Anyway, as I said, a warm welcome to everybody. And at this stage now, I'll hand over to Liz for items 1 and 2, if I may.
Thank you. We haven't received any apologies today, so if I just do the roll call. Cyril Anderson?
I'm present, Liz, thank you.
Mike Day?
Yeah, I'm here.
Mike Dirk? No. Kevin Griffiths?
Yeah.
Paxton Hood-Williams?
I think so.
Yvonne Jardine?
Yes.
Sue Jones?
Yes.
Erica Kirshner? Wendy Lewis?
Present.
Des Thomas?
Can see him. He's
yeah, I got him. And Mike Dirk has joined us as well. I've got you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Liz.
Elliot King? Dave House?
Yes.
Julie Davis?
Hi, yeah, here.
Simon Jones?
Simon's muted as well.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And the second item is confirmation of convener. Paxton Hood-Williams has confirmed that he's happy to continue as the convener for the next year. And I just want to confirm that the panel members are happy that he continues.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thanks very much. If I can hand back to Paxton then for item 3, please.
Thank you very much. I much appreciate that, and I'm happy to carry on for the present time, and that's a good place to be, I think. Item 3 is disclosures of personal and prejudicial interest. So if you have any, now's your opportunity to declare them. Does anybody so want? No.
Sorry, Paxton. Sorry, I do apologise. I do say it every now and then when it's important to point out that my missus does work for China Family Social Services. It's not directly relevant to the agenda, but it's something I like to say so that we'll be completely clear about it.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Just to help me out as well, if you want to say anything, please click on the top, on the hand on the top, and then that comes up nice and high for me to see it, and I'll be able to call you then. Item 5 is a minutes of the previous meeting. You've all had a chance to have a look at them. I couldn't see anything that I needed to correct in terms of accuracy. I don't know if anybody did. If not, I'll ask you if you've got any matters arising. And again, I couldn't really see anything coming out of those in terms of matters arising. Okay.
Yeah,
so I'll move on. And if, pardon?
I move them as a correct record.
Hi, Des. And anybody want to second that?
I can second those.
Thank you, Sue. Let's say no. Everybody's in favour. Item 6 is public question time. I suspect we haven't had any questions, Liz, is that right?
No questions submitted.
Okay, thank you. So we move on straight to item 7. The Wales Audit Office follow-up review of the corporate safeguarding arrangements for children in City Council. Simon, obviously this is your report. I don't know if you're going to take that or if Julie wants to say something first of all. Or...
I don't mind kicking off the discussion, sending the report if that's okay, Chair.
No, I'm happy for Simon to take the lead on this. It's his report. And...
Okay, over to you, Simon.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just some background in terms of this. This was a follow-up review to an earlier review which happened in about 2014 and of Swansea, and also a national review around all the local authorities in Wales in 2015. So this report relates to the follow-up review which happened at the end of last year, and the report came out earlier this year. I think it was around February, April time or something like that. So the report relating to Swansea is now being published, recent report. And as a protocol, we have to report on the findings and what we intend to do about it within our scrutiny process. Now, the review in Swansea was related to the arrangements for corporate safeguarding, but particularly in relation to children. That was the scope of the review. I believe, Paxton, you met the reviewer, didn't you, at the time he came last year?
Yes, I did. That's a long time ago.
Yeah, it is, right. Yeah, there's a lot of things have happened since then, haven't they? So
Absolutely.
if you don't mind, Chair, I'll just take you through the report in broad terms, but also give that kind of context around corporate safeguarding, what we mean by that, if that's okay, just so we are fully aware of it. You'll have that awareness, but just so everybody has. The council has a corporate safeguarding policy, and we've taken an everybody's business approach to safeguarding, in that everybody who works for the council and on behalf of the council is eyes and ears within our communities and within our work and our services, in terms of protecting vulnerable children and adults in their everyday activities. So we have the approach to corporate safeguarding pervading all of our services, and that's reflected in our corporate safeguarding policy. And so within that, obviously, the rights of the child are reflected, and we expect staff, if they come across anything that they're concerned about, to have conversations with our front door, statutory front doors, or within their, or first and foremost, with their leads within each service area. So that each service area has a designated safeguarding lead, and who has received a higher level of training. All staff are expected to be trained in safeguarding, and adults and children. Most of that is conducted by e-learning. And so the conversations can be, if they are concerned, can be had first of all with the leads and then with the statutory front doors if it's escalated. So there's a broader corporate focus on safeguarding within our corporate strategic plan, and the governance arrangements for corporate safeguarding have been strengthened in the last few years. There's a corporate safeguarding group which is chaired by the Director of Social Services, Dave, obviously, and alongside Dave is the cabinet member. So there is a joint focus within that group on driving through improvements on a routine basis. So the report does reflect some of that activity in terms of how we're responding to the improvements that have been set out in terms of what Swansea's needed. Now, the review itself met with a number of concerned individuals, not a huge number, some unelected members and some officers, mainly officers from social services or HR. It wasn't a wide scale whole council review in that sense, but in terms of it was really picking up the improvements that were set down previously. So that's largely what their focus was. And broadly speaking, they found that we had improved those areas, but then they have also set down further challenges for us in terms of going forward. And I think that's the case in all of the reviews they've done across Wales, really. We're not out anything different. From my point of view, there were no surprises in what they said, because we basically told them where to, the things we were concerned about, their report is a fairly good reflection of that in a way, because we are a work in progress, as always, aren't we? But we, I guess where I was, I suppose, a little bit disappointed in their report is that it didn't really reflect the scale of our concerns, of how we've mobilised the whole council approach to safeguarding. But then again, that was because they limited their own scope, so they didn't really get a sense of that. For instance, things like corporate parenting, or I mean, they didn't really go into actually child and family services, so there's looking at all the sorts of things that we do within families and the whole scale of practice that we have, none of that was part of their scope. So they had a very limited field of view on what they were looking at. But having said that, corporate safeguarding is important as well. So what the areas that they did look at and they have reported on in terms of improvements are.
Can I interrupt for a minute, Simon, please?
Yeah, sure.
Have you got a question, Mike? Mike K?
Yeah, thank you, Paxton. I don't know if it's appropriate to ask the question at this point, but if I ask it anyway, and then you can tell me if it's not appropriate. And thanks, Simon. I think it's quite interesting, and you partly answered my question in the sense of looking at the remit of the study. And forgive me again, because it may well be that as a scrutiny group, you've already looked at safeguarding in a wider sense. But one question I had was how is the relationship with education in terms of safeguarding as well? Because clearly there's quite an overlap between the two. Now, I appreciate the study was not remitted to look at that particular area, but maybe just another point I'd be interested in finding out how the link with education goes. And again, it's probably preempting something you're going to say, Simon, but in connection with the action plan at the end, I noticed that there are time scales allocated to the first couple of actions in terms of when things are likely to be completed. Do you have an idea of when the other items would be dealt with?
I think, Mike, obviously Simon can answer what he wants to at this point in time, but as we go through the report, I think some of those answers will come out anyway.
Yeah, so certainly I'll try and address most of what you've come across. Certainly with the education, we're involved in the review only at the latter stages as a follow-up, really. So it became sort of apparent that there were things that touched on how education are the systems around education in relation to the council, certainly around information around workforce and things like that. So it only surfaced as through the field work. So that, I mean, these are issues that they're not new to the council in a sense, are they? Because certainly schools operate sometimes as a separate establishments within the council itself, don't they? So there are issues around that, and certainly from a safeguarding point of view, that were surfaced as part of the process. So, and I'll come on to these timescales really, because a bit later. So things that were raised as part of the improvements going forward were DBS checks, and how do we know at a point in time whether all the staff that are having, are there in posts that are designated as needing DBS checks, or have those in place and are updated in place, and how are managers notified when they're not, then they need to be updated, those sorts of things. And the council's ability to report on that, recruitment and selection policy, our central HR system got attention, something we've surfaced ourselves. Tender documentation, and I guess, and certainly the role of volunteers within services got some attention in terms of the improvement actions going forward, because I guess more and more the council is using volunteers. Certainly within the COVID response, there has been a wider, reliance on volunteer type workforce, and how we make sure that comes under the safe recruitment, safe selection umbrella that the council has, but also that we have the range of procurement and commissioning of services and the workforce, starts to take shape. We are out, we have more arrangements for involving third parties in services. Then how do we ensure that the safeguarding is reflected within that? within all the contract arrangements, and also then followed up in terms of monitoring. Again, around controls around corporate safeguarding, there was some attention around that in the improvements around performance measurement. How do we report on things like training and Dbs checks and compliance in that sense, and how do we know whether we're effective or not? And that is, as I say, is a work in progress. The review also brought in violence against women, domestic violence, sexual violence as part of this umbrella, whereas they'd also earlier done a review of that as a separate thing on a national basis. So they've mentioned that we obviously need to carry out mandatory training. Everybody, elected members and staff need to have done the mandatory training around that. But also our compliance is a similar issue to the one around safeguarding. How do we know whether staff have undertaken it or not? So in terms of those are the sorts of things that were surfaced through the review. It was very much around, policy, procedural stuff, in terms of more around workforce than about practice as such. But so in terms of how we're responding to that, well, the governance now within the council has been for the last few years. A corporate safeguarding group is in place. There are a number of task groups set up within that process that reflect, I think, the 6 areas that we are concerned with within the corporate safeguarding group are safe employment, a safe workforce, safe practice, safe voice, safe performance, and safe partnerships. So those are the sort of bounded areas of work that are taking forward the improvements that we've already identified for ourselves within that governance. Now, the timescales for that are very much within the the accountability of those task groups, if you like. So some of it is still a work in progress. They're moving things at different paces. For instance, some things are contingent on the council's investment in a corporate system for workforce management, the Oracle Cloud system that's being implemented at the moment. So some of the setting of timescales is not always, it's still a work in progress. So I think, we're fairly confident from a council's point of view that we will be able to progress most of the improvements that were set out by the WAO in their report, and that we have a robust governance arrangement to take that forward. I think that was all my presentation at this stage.
If I may come in for just for a minute there, and there are a couple of hands coming up now, but just before I call people in, obviously in the report itself, in terms of proposals for improvement, about 4 or 5 of those are directly in respect of DBS in particular. And certainly at this point in time, the audit committee has got concerns in that respect as well. And we've been looking at that now, and Sarah will remind me if I get this wrong. Since basically the beginning of this year, January 2020, we've been having reports coming back because there was a report coming in which is only moderate in this respect, and there are concerns, and we expect the department to come back and talk to us as they're sorting things out and when they've got it sorted out. But there are major concerns, or we have major concerns, I think you'd agree, Cyril, in terms of basically what was happening with Dbs checks and how we were ensuring that everybody who needed to have those Dbs checks had them, and had them up to date, and that they were still valid. Anyway, that was just a bit of background just to let you know that the audit committee is also looking at this element as well, and I'm sure Simon is aware of that because he does refer to it in the report as well. Julie, you wanted to come back? And I'll call you in afterwards, Kevin, then. Sorry, and can you unmute yourself, please?
Apologies, I didn't press enough buttons. Thank you. I thought it would be helpful just to give you an overview of the working relationships that we have with our education colleagues from an operational and a strategic perspective. So the positive is that I think probably COVID has accelerated improving working relationships with education, as a consequence of us meeting to begin with on a weekly basis to prioritise those children we're most worried about that would be in education settings, including early years. So we've put our collective endeavours together with education colleagues to ensure we prioritise those children and keep them safe and ensure that they're receiving their education entitlement. And where we're worried about them, we've been talking to each other about who we're worried about, and that's continued. And we've learned from that in terms of how we identify those that we're most worried about, which I think is really good news that we've been able to establish that and maintain that from March through to this current date. Although we are meeting slightly less frequently, we have reviewed it in light of the local fire break. So I think that's a testament to the positive endeavours and just our collective wish that we work together. And then the other thing I wanted to share, with a couple of things really, is that education sector does have its own statutory guidance keeping learners safe in education. So they are held accountable for how they, as is the local authority, but also individual education settings, for how they deliver against that statutory guidance through their own, so for example, through their own inspections, as we are too. And that has just been refreshed in the last couple of months and updated for education settings. And the other thing to say is that we've been working hard to engage our education colleagues in helping us to look at how we could work together better and differently, for example, in relation to updating our thresholds document and what that means in relation to understanding when to refer, how to refer, and making sure that they actually refer children in a timely way when they're concerned about them. And that's going really well. I had some good feedback from primary head teachers last week that I attended and the wider head teachers forum. And we're engaged in a lot of strategic and operational groups in terms of those children that are harder to place in education. So I think, and also the management group of the new PRU. So I think the interactions are there and building, and we're all pretty much on the same page and understanding how we can mutually support each other and knowing that it's okay to have a conversation and talk about worries and concerns as soon as they happen rather than waiting. So yeah, I hope that's helpful.
Okay, thank you, Julie. Kevin, you wanted to ask a question?
Yeah, my questions are about the DBS checks, but I think you said you're going to enlighten us on that later, is it?
What I said was basically that the audit committee is looking very closely at that at the moment. I think we're due to have a report coming back to us in the next couple of months now in that committee in terms of what's been going on there. They have been to us for a couple of occasions now, and there is software, I think, being developed to improve the effectiveness of that system. I think that will eventually go up into the cloud, and that's the process that's ongoing at the moment, is developing that software. Is that right, Cyril? I don't think I've got anything wrong there, have I?
No, you haven't got anything wrong. They, as you said, in the audit, they had concerns about the Dbs checks and all that, and they were open. The officer concerned then come back and stated that they're trying to put it into the cloud, and once they do that, they'll come back and update us.
Yes. Basically, the computer systems that are in place are not 100% foolproof at the moment, and I think the efforts are being made to make sure that that is the case in that sense. So I don't know if that answers your question for you, Kevin.
My question is basically, how often do the DBS checks get done on our staff, or how often are they required? And the other one was, do we do DBS checks on volunteers before they start?
I'll hand that back to officers, but I'm pretty sure it's a 3-year term for a DBS anyway, and then in that sense, obviously anybody working with children, as far as we're concerned, would have to have a DBS. But I'm sure I've put that back to either Simon or Julie to answer that one. Simon? Sorry, unmute yourself, Simon, please.
Sorry. I mean, each role is there is a determination whether DBS check is needed or not, isn't there? And then from where there is a DBS, there is management accountability for that within, that managers need to know whether their staff are having up-to-date DBS. So that, regardless of a system, we still have that expectation that managers take responsibility for who's in their employment and that their checks are up to date. So they have that control. in place, you know, and so not only our audit committee looking at whether we have good enough systems to actually enable managers to do what they're expected to do effectively, we're updating the policy at the same time as well. So some of the structures within the council have changed, haven't they? There's a DBS team set up. They have a sort of a front desk helpline type arrangement and things like that. So apart from part of what the audit committee needs to be satisfied with, are those arrangements working for the council? Are they working for managers? So so I mean, for me, I have my own DBS check because I'm a, you know, I have and that I'm responsible for maintaining that as an up to date. You know, I subscribe to the vetting system, and it allows it to update automatically. So you know, I take that as a personal responsibility for myself. You know that, but we haven't made those sorts of expectations clear of everybody, and it is so I think the council should certainly have systems to know which roles have that requirement around the DBS check, what the period of time it is, when the date updates are due, and it's pulling all of that information together so it's useful for managers, and we can test our compliance within that on a regular basis. At the moment, we're not there yet.
Des, you want to come in?
Okay, yeah, again on DBS checks, how many is any one person supposed to have? I think currently I have 2 and 1 pending. So, you know, does anyone know the answer to that?
Sorry,
it should be role specified, shouldn't it? It depends on which role you're conducting yourself, because you could be a volunteer in one sphere and a professional in another sphere, and each role will have their own DBS requirements, and well, sometimes they are separately required separately, aren't they? In some ways. Okay,
I've got one for each primary school, which I'm a governor of, so that's 2, and I got 1 pending, as Mike would know, for Galway College currently. So I would have thought 1 check per person would be sufficient.
And ideally, that'll be the case when we're under that one organisational, one safe recruitment umbrella, you know.
Kevin, you want to come back?
Yeah, it certainly will save a lot of expense. I've got a DBS check for a school governor, and I also have a check for working in the hospital with vulnerable adults. So, you know, and it's all linked to the same government or same council, isn't it?
It depends who's delivering those DBSs. I know as far as we're concerned in the City Council, it's Carmarthen who actually issues the DBS. They do all the necessary work to determine that. With the health service, I don't know who would be operating the service for them. But yes, I'm sure there is cash being wasted in that area in certain respects.
It's a growth.
David, do you want to come in, and then I'll come to you, Yvonne?
Yeah, I suspect, to try and be helpful really, I suspect you're straying into, understandably so, given that it's come up in the context of the audit report, technical stuff about how DBS works and how, you know, what the law is around the DBS. You haven't got the DBS experts in the room, given that you know that you know, audit committee is already on the case of seeking assurance about those arrangements. I think I'd probably suggest that, you know, if you have specific questions, that you pull those together and make sure they're fed through to the audit committee, so that when that, you know, the audit committee are going to have the DBS team back in front of them. So if there are things that the committee have picked up as outstanding issues that you'd want assurance on, get that assurance in one place. Otherwise, we might have a number of, you know, different kind of scrutiny and audit activities, all looking at the same thing, all looking at, you know, variations on the same theme, where it's probably better to let the audit committee, who already got that work in train, finish their work. But they're good questions that are being raised. If we fed them in via that route, we could get it all addressed in one go.
I'm sure we can organise that, David, and we'll do it that way. I think it makes a lot of sense. Certainly, I think there's also a role, I'm just going to say this, there's a role for HR to keep the record straight as well, but that's another story, and that's where the computer systems come into play, I guess. Anybody else want to come in? Yvonne, you wanted to say something?
No, Chair, it's okay. David pretty much covered most of it.
That's okay. Anybody else got any points they want to raise? Do you want to go for the action plan at all, Simon?
Oh, sorry, I'm trying to unbleep myself then. Happy to, Chair. Only in terms of what I was saying earlier around assigning the areas of improvement to the specific task groups that come under the corporate safeguarding group, really. And you know, making sure that you're aware of the scope of work. So there's two. The appendix 1 is around the work program for the specific areas that I've mentioned. So there's a work group focusing on safe employment, and there's a HR lead there, and that's looking, you know, to make sure that all the staff are, you know, all the checks are in place for the staff at the point of employment, but and also throughout their employment career. But I think one of the things that that particular group's engaged with at the moment is to reflect on that corporate safeguarding is featured within all of the policies that come under the HR, you know, what used to be a staff handbook, if you like, you know, that because actually, you know, and also within job descriptions as well. So we, you know, because we haven't always referenced the expectations around safeguarding in the job descriptions, in the staff induction thing. I think that comes into workforce, but that sort of whole process really for staff. So the next one is safe workforce, and that looks at how we enable staff to do that, to meet that expectation around corporate safeguarding. So so that the staff have the induction process where the expectations raised, the training, the mandatory training, the support and the structures where within situ there's a safeguarding lead that they can talk to about issues that are raised. All of that structure and process and resource is there to support staff to be effective in their meeting that expectation around corporate safeguarding. And so we have Teresa Mylan-Rees leading on that work. Safe practice really is what we're talking about in terms of the statutory areas and how concerns that are raised within corporate safeguarding. There is a robust response within our statutory services, so that we can have the right conversations at the right time about the right children, that type of approach. So how, you know, and you know, the leads have that relationship with statutory services that they can have those conversations, and it is, you know, there's a robust response to that, and the conversations are taking place in the right way. Safe Voice really is a piece of work that we've been wanting to do for some time. It's really about putting the voice of the child and the voice of the adult, because we're talking about corporate safeguarding in the wider sense, at the centre of how we work. So the child or the adult who's vulnerable, who needs safeguarding attention, doesn't get lost in the whole bureaucratic system, if you like, of that they're very much at the forefront. And you know, that they have, you know, we communicate outwards to, you know, in a way that reflects that. Certainly, the rights of the child, the rights of the vulnerable are to the fore in how we're working. So that group particularly is mainly focusing more on the adult side, but it certainly, because it's already has been prevalent in how we work in children's services for a number of years. Safe partnership again brings us into this that touches on lots of different realms, because we can't do safeguarding in isolation. We are involved with other organisations, and we are involved in strategic partnership working around safer communities, around regional working, and we've already touched on partnerships within how the council operates as well. So all of those territories, if you like, for our potential areas where we have to keep safeguarding at the forefront, really, and but also communicate ensure there's lines of communication within that. Things like, for instance, domestic violence can't be undertaken by one individual organisation. It has to be done in collaboration, and the same goes for safeguarding. So that group is particularly working on that area. And I think the one I'm leading on is safe performance. So how do we know whether we're effective or not? How do we develop the measurement of compliance, and also and establish some of the controls? One of the areas I'm involved in my piece of work at the moment is the audit of compliance within each of the service areas within the council. So they're doing their own self-assessment and demonstrating what the work they've done, and the work that they think still needs to be done. So we're testing out compliance within the specific service areas within the council, and through that process, their knowledge of what needs to be done. So those are the sort of areas of work. And in terms of timescales going forward, in terms of the action plan, each of those is assigned to one of the groups. The areas of improvement has been assigned to one of those 6 areas, and basically I'm saying that they're all in progress, but admittedly we haven't got timescales for all of them at this stage. But partly because of COVID, some of the policy work, for instance, I'm aware that it's been quite difficult to undertake within the the changing working arrangements, because these things tend to be done quite collaboratively, and so there's been, and obviously some of the mass changes in what workforce are doing has required a lot of investment of their time. So at this stage we haven't got clear timescales on all of these activities. So that's all I would say at this stage, Chair.
Okay, Simon. Thank you. Anybody got any questions now for Simon or Julie or Dave? Oh, yeah. In that case, obviously, as you say, there are a number of those actions in the plan which yet do not have end dates by. Appreciate, obviously, COVID has come along and has thrown real span in the works as far as normal service is concerned within the council. That goes without saying, I guess. And I suspect it's social services, by and large, which is taking the brunt of it, David, I would guess. So it's obviously been other things that you have needed to concentrate on, and I fully understand that. I notice you want to say something, David, and Elliot has put his hand up as well. So David first and then Elliot afterwards.
Yeah, so yeah, you're absolutely right, Paxton. Clearly, the impact of COVID has meant that we've been concentrating on managing the emergency, making sure we're concentrating on doing what matters in the very short term to keep or to support the population to stay safe and well. Julie gave examples of the work that we've been doing to make, with schools, etc., to focus on, particularly when we were in lockdown and schools were shut, that we weren't losing sight of, our most vulnerable children across the population. It has been that crisis emergency work. We are now going back into a second wave. We're gonna, we're back in emergency mode across the directorate, doing all of that stuff. But right at the centre of that is that safeguarding focus. So some stuff that we might otherwise have got on with, that's reflected in the work plan that's Simon has set out, has necessarily had to be slowed down while we concentrate on managing the emergency. That's likely to be the case for at least the next 6 months in reality. It doesn't mean that we are losing sight of it, though. The corporate safeguarding board will maintain oversight of the programme of medium-term and longer-term improvements, as well as making sure that we're doing all we can to keep people, children and families and adults safe and well in the meantime. If the committee comes up with, either through the discussions now or if committee members reflect afterwards, any suggestions that come through from the committee, they can be directed through to the Corporate Safeguarding Board, and I and the responsible cabinet member will make sure we're picking those things up in timely fashion, albeit reinforce again, at the moment it's concentrate on the emergency, concentrate on managing the immediate safety and well-being of our population, understandably so.
Okay, David, thank you. Elliot?
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, just apologies from me for joining the meeting a bit late. I had some unexpected news as far as I was about to join, so I just had to take a couple of minutes. Just to say, I think this may well have already been mentioned, but I know Hugh Evans sent around the sort of links for councillors to do the updated training for safeguarding. So I think it's particularly important that we all make sure that we do that and set an example to the rest of the staff in the council to make sure that we're all up to date. And I know we managed to get up to a good compliance with that last time it was due, so I think that would be really good. And I think that also then provides a timely reminder for members about the best way in which to raise any concerns with the service, because I think there are still some councillors who don't use the correct channels, and that can lead to delays sometimes. So I think it's that reinforcing that message is really important as well, so that we're using the channels that are set up for that to make sure that the right person actions that at the right time, in the right way. So I think that's really important. Thank you.
Thank you, Elliot. Erica, did you have a question?
Yes, Chair. I do apologise. I think it might be a bit late, the question, after listening to Dave and Elliot, and both thank you so much for what you're doing. But the question I had is the collaboration between child and family services and adult social services around domestic abuse. I'm not clear on it, and perhaps there could be, perhaps not now, but a breakdown of how we work together as departments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Erica. Can I ask David a question in a minute? You talked about the safeguarding board. Obviously, we did have a Swansea corporate safeguarding board that went to Western Bay. We then had the Public Protection Committee with the chief executive. Where exactly are we standing with all that now?
Yeah, sorry, Paxton, I used clumsy language then. So we've got the corporate safeguarding group is the group that I was referring to, which is where we have oversight of our corporate safeguarding work, all of the things that Simon's reflected on in his report. You're right, we had a Swansea safeguarding board, which has now moved to a regional safeguarding board. We still have local partnership groups, I suppose, to make sure that our consideration of things at a regional level, that when there is specific local stuff that we need to take forward. So if I gave it one of the examples Julie's already reflected on, we have partnership working with education at regional safeguarding board level, but Julie's described here's how we work very closely with our local education department colleagues and department, and how we work very closely with our schools. So there is an infrastructure locally that makes sure we're focusing on yes, it's strategic, but it's also drilling down to the operational, day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month, doing the business to make sure we're concentrating on doing what matters to keep children and families safe, to keep adults safe. So there is that infrastructure. The overarching board arrangements, though, that has statutory accountability or is set out in statute, is now the Regional Safeguarding Board. you may well want an update from that board at some stage as part of your programme. I didn't spot it on your programme, but it'd be perfectly appropriate to have that, or to be asking. That probably makes sense for you to have that at some point. You don't need to necessarily worry about it this year, but you could have it in your programme for next year, just to formally get some feedback on how is that regional work going, given that it was quite, it's quite a shift to move from the local to the regional arrangements. From my perspective, it's working really well. Again, COVID has strengthened partnership working between the councils and with the health board across health and social care, of which safeguarding is clearly a big part. So from my perspective, partnership working across this region in the health and social care and safeguarding territory and related stuff is the strongest it's ever been, and I think that's really good. But you may well, as a committee, want to dive into some of the detail around that. It'd be perfectly appropriate to ask for the board to come and talk to you about that work, maybe in next year's programme, because you're going to run out of time this year, I suspect, in trying to fit everything in. And you've done that in the past, but you probably haven't done it for a year or so. So maybe that's something for you to consider.
Thank you, David. Anybody else got any questions now? Because if not, David, you've really given me the lead into the next item on the agenda, which is our work programme for the rest of the year.
I think, Chair, we need to, they're asking for us to endorse the conclusion and the actions set out in the report. I'm happy to move that.
Thank you, Des. I'm glad you reminded me of that. Yes, okay. Could I have a seconder then, please?
Yeah, I'll second that.
I'll second it.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Yes, you're right enough. I should have read the top of it as well, shouldn't I, instead of putting it to one side. My apologies. All those in favour then, or if anybody's against, please say so now. I take it that everybody's happy with that. Yeah. So as I say, David has given me the lead into the work programme. That's been put together obviously for the next 8 months at least, I suppose. There's a fair amount of work at the bottom of that as well, David, which we could add to, but I know Julie's had a chance to look at it. Elliot has had a chance to look at it. I particularly would be interested to know that you're reasonably happy with that programme as it stands at the moment, and certainly members, if you've got anything else that you would like us to look at, and please now say so. It's going to be difficult to fit anything new in because we've got all those other items below the table itself which we need to fit in as well. And that's probably one of the reasons why we needed to go to 6 weeks rather than 8 weeks. So, anybody got any comments to make? Julie.
Thanks, Chair. I think the programme that takes us to the end of the municipal year focuses on the areas that we're driving around improvement, and also areas that that we are interested in ensuring that the local children are getting the right services in terms, for example, in terms of emotional health and well-being. One thing I was going to suggest, based on Erica's comment about domestic abuse, if it's possible to weave in that response around that item that's coming in December about how we work collaboratively across children and adult services around domestic abuse. I'm not familiar with that audit office report, but I'll certainly look at how we could bring that into that report. I'm sure that's probably feasible to do. And then the other thing I was going to suggest is that the future items, the list at the end of the table, perhaps we could have a conversation with you, Paxton, about what that could look like. Because I'm just conscious that I'm relatively new into post, and I'm looking myself about what the service and the shape of the service going forward, the challenges around COVID, and we're going through some service reviews where we're thinking about not just the service and how it's fit for purpose and meeting statutory guidance and regulations, but also how we actually bring COVID in as part of business as usual, because it's, as Dave said, it's not going away anytime soon. So it's, for example, about how we acknowledge and accept that direct work with children and families will always look different going forward. So what does that mean for us in terms of our interactions with children and families? And what does that mean in terms of how we then can continue to progress children's journeys in a timely way? So we're facing these challenges and dilemmas at the moment, and we're looking at what that means for the vision and shape of the future service delivery for children and families across Swansea. So I thought perhaps if you would allow us just a little bit of time to reflect on that, and maybe we could have a separate offline meeting with yourself and Elliot just to talk that through once I've had a bit of time to, and then that can help shape your future programme from the list that's beneath, and maybe add to or enhance it based on what we can see as the priorities going forward. Just to make you aware of that, really.
Okay, thanks, Julie. Obviously, our role as a scrutiny panel basically is to help and support where we can. Obviously, we will be critical on times because that's the nature of the game, but hopefully we'll be a critical friend. And I know David will know full well, and we'll have briefed you about that already anyway. But anything that we can do in that sense to help, then at this time that's got to be important, and we will do what we can in that respect. I don't think any member is going to disagree with that. I think it's probably fair that I say as well, obviously it's been a difficult now, what, 8 months getting on for, I guess. And I know we've said it before in previous meetings, but we would still like you to take back your staff. Our appreciation of all the work and effort that is going in. And if you could take that back, and we are very grateful for that, then we would be grateful for you taking it back as well.
Yes, of course.
Sue has a hunger.
Thank you. Hello? Are you good? Maybe we need to have a conversation, Paxton, because on adult services scrutiny, domestic violence is on that agenda as well for our workload. So maybe we should have, not to duplicate for the staff, a conversation about where we're going with that.
Well, I think, David, you can take that away and think about that together with Julie, how you fit it in. Obviously, we have got that item on the agenda for next month, as far as we're concerned, here in terms of tackling violence against women. We could almost set up a joint committee there, well, sorry, a joint committee meeting at one stage, perhaps, to discuss that. I'm not sure, but it's certainly something we could talk about. If you want to come back, officers and so on that, then fine, we'll talk about that. David?
Yeah, look, I was going to make a general point. I said the same thing in the most recent adult scrutiny. As we've talked a few times, and we really appreciate the feedback and the support from the committee, we are right back in the midst of it. That is going to dominate, you know, rightly so, officers' time. So if they're, we very much value the critical friend support that we've had from both scrutiny committees. So we don't want to, we definitely don't want to dilute that. That will continue to be very helpful, perhaps, you know, even more helpful during this difficult time. But finding opportunities like the one that you've just described around what we do need to be talking about, and providing reassurance and having fresh eyes on our work around things like you know, violence against women. But if we did it once and then perhaps had some flexibility around, well, maybe on that occasion it is a joint panel as opposed to separate panels, that's bound to be useful and helpful. So considering the two agendas, you know, alongside one another, and seeing where there's opportunities to you know, to cut down on what otherwise would be an unnecessary additional workload for officers. I think that's a good, excellent suggestion. I think once you've both, you know, both panels have finalised their best hopes for an agenda for this, you know, for the next 6 months, if we then look at them together, I will, you know, I'll reinforce again, even with best intent, it could be that we're coming back to the panels at very short notice saying we're not going to be able to service this, you know, because we're in the midst of a crisis. And I know that you'd be supportive of that. I don't want that to be interpreted as we have suddenly started not valuing the really important role of scrutiny, because particularly for our services, your approaches to this specific scrutiny has supported and in some areas helped drive improvement, which is what scrutiny should absolutely be about. So perhaps we can, as Julie suggested, the chairs, the responsible cabinet members, the responsible heads of service, and I'll try and contribute something useful to discussion. Perhaps revisit that outside of the panel meeting, but start with set your best hopes for your program's quite right for you to do that, because that will kick the conversation off.
Okay, I think certainly there's a lot of food for thought there, I'm sure. I suspect that both the panels, the members of both panels will be prepared to understand the situation at this point in time, and where it is sensible to bring two meetings together, perhaps we will try and do that. Anybody disagreeing with that, or are you happy for Sue and I to talk together with the senior officers and the cabinet member to try and make these things happen? Erica?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, just to say, I think that's the way forward, and to have the reassurance of what we're doing is connected, collaborative, and that we can do our best. And just to say, of course, we understand what everybody's going through right now, but we mustn't leave it off the agenda. And we got to keep thinking, how can we do better? How can we get rid of the problem? Thank you.
Absolutely.
Mike Dirk?
Thanks, Chair. Could I just support what Dave has said there? Fantastic, Dave, to hear about the resounding drive that we've seen in the context of partnership work and collaboration. The magic happens through the face work on the ground. And so when I hear talk about governance and strategy and corporate, I always think that's sucking up resources. The resources at this time need to be driven down to the front line, because once the front line crumbles, if we put too much stress and pressure on the front line, then it all falls apart. So I see those critical success factors, not just in our context in China Family Social Services, but in other contexts across public services. So I urge us all to bear in mind the pressures that the front line are under, having to have had to adapt to very new and distant ways of working in this, the most important of all public services. The struggle of actually seeing children, for example. So I support Dave absolutely, and of course Julie. Hello, Julie. I don't think we met before. But yeah, the magic happens on the front line. Partnership work and collaboration is everything. So it's just for us as we go forward to be mindful of supporting these people who transform the lives of our most vulnerable children and families. They are really under the cosh. Thank you.
Yes, I think to be fair, I said earlier, it is social services that basically this pandemic is really loading more than anybody else. I know the schools might argue with that and education might want to, but certainly we fully understand that. And so if nothing else comes out of this at the end of the day, if it's the working together, the partnership that we've been developing with the health boards, with education and with social services working together, then that's got to be a positive, and we've got to hold on to that and make sure it carries on through. But if you're happy, then what I said is Sue and I will sit down and we'll talk to senior officers and the cabinet member and see what we can do in terms of bringing elements of our programs of work together to minimise the amount of work that we're going to impose. And we do understand and we do realise that if we're asking for a report coming back, it does take officers time, and somebody's got to write that report at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
Is that fair?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, in that case, I'll say thank you very much. I don't think there's anything else we need to discuss at this moment, but at this point in time, we're scheduled for our next meeting on the 16th of December. Well, that'll be a joint meeting or not remains to be seen, or whether it'll be one in between. The next Adult Social Services and Child and Family Services, we'll take it from there. But we'll keep you posted and we'll keep you informed. Although I guess Liz isn't going to say thank you for that because she'll have the job of fitting them all together. But that's another story. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Bye.
Buddy.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Sorry, I should have said thank you to Simon as well, particularly for presenting the report as well. Sorry, Simon. You heard all that, Liz? Oh, you're muted now, aren't you?
What I'm sort of thinking, I can't imagine that we'd need to reduce the number of meetings. It's more a matter of not duplicating between the two, because there are so many items, aren't there? I mean, I know I did realise in the adult services, when Sue mentioned doing domestic abuse, that we already had a Wales Audit Office report coming on that. So I was going to speak to the Child and Family Services panel. So I was going to speak to her about that, because obviously there's no point in coming to both.
Well, what I think we need to do, Sue and I, is sit down with you, perhaps with the two heads of service as well, just to work through, look, we got these on our programme. What items are there here which are basically concerning both, right? Yeah. Like this business of domestic violence, and see if we can bring a meeting in somewhere that just brings them together, so that we can take them off our agendas. And
yeah, I'm sort of thinking if they were on the agenda for one of them, and then we invite the panel members from the other panel to come along to that meeting. That's the best way to do it, I think, isn't it?
I think you're probably right. Yeah.
Yeah, because we've already got, I know, because we got the Wales Audit Office report on the Integrated Care Fund is coming to the Adult Services panel, but that applies to both panels. So I've already made a note at the bottom of the work programme for Child and Family that they'll be invited to that meeting as well. So I think that's probably going to be the best way to do it, isn't it? To if there's something that applies to both, it comes to one of the meetings, and then we invite the other the panel members from the other meeting to that meeting.
Yes.
So that we're not duplicating. But as I say, I can't see it reducing the number of meetings because we haven't got that many to the rest of the year anyway, and we're struggling to get everything in at the moment, aren't we? So it's just a matter of maybe taking a few off one or the other.
Yeah.
Because they're on both at the moment. I don't know if that applies to many things, but domestic violence is definitely one of them. Yeah.
I would have thought assessments was probably another one that's common to both.
Well, they've already done carers assessments. Do you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, we already had that to the adult services one, haven't we? They came last year. But earlier on in the year, sorry, but we delayed the one to Child and Family. It was delayed because the meeting didn't take place because it was due to come in March. So Adult Services actually had theirs. They've looked at it. So I don't think, we need to do that one for both. But yeah, considering, yeah.
I'm looking for anything here at the moment which falls into that.
I know, I don't think there is a lot. I know domestic abuse is definitely one of them, so we need to do that. And the Integrated Care Fund was the only other one that I had on there.
Adult Social Services has done complaints.
Social Services complaints, they come into both, yeah. That's down for both. Yeah, that's another thing actually. Yeah. So complaints it could be. And then it's the domestic abuse, which is coming to the December meeting actually, so that's coming to the next meeting.
The other thing we could possibly consider, although there's a lot in both of them, I suppose, is performance monitoring as well.
That would be so long though, wouldn't it? It would be
pretty hectic, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I don't know whether that would work because this is we spend so much time in each of the meetings looking at that, and it doesn't come to all of them. It only comes to like every other one anyway. I don't know whether we'd gain because it'd be such a long meeting, wouldn't it? We'd have to take everything else off the agenda just to have that.
Yes, you're probably right.
I think you probably defeat the object, really.
No, you're not probably right. You are right.
So at the moment, I think we're looking at complaints, the domestic abuse and the Integrated Care Fund are the only ones I can see at the moment, but I'll have a look at it and see if there's anything else.
The other thing we could do as well is consider the gender budgets together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the possibility. Yeah.
The February meetings, wouldn't it?
One meeting to do that in February.
Yes,
yeah, that would probably help, wouldn't it?
We got two items there, haven't we, which we could do on one. We got the complaints one and the
yeah, we could do all of those in the February meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that would mean that Sarah Lackenby only needed to come to one instead of two to do the complaints as well then.
Yes.
As well as all the other staff. And yeah, so that would probably work quite well, wouldn't it? So there we are. There are a few options then to reduce one or two meetings. Well, it probably only reduces one meeting because it takes out the budget, one of the budget meetings maybe. But then domestic abuse and the integrated care funds are all, we wouldn't take out a meeting. It just means that we don't have them at both. You know, it's either one or the other, and then invite the other panel members to it.
We'll do one for one and one for the other, and that gives us a little bit more scope in both of them then, doesn't it, to do something else?
Yeah, well, at the moment, I think that's how it's working, because we've got domestic abuse coming to the child and family one's next meeting, haven't we?
Yeah.
And the integrated care fund is down for adult services. So I think that would be fine. So yes,
so can we do
what
those
are we looking at
together?
doing then? So if I have a look and because we've got other items as well on the bottom of child and family, haven't we? Now we've got the forced marriages, but that doesn't have to be done until next year. We can do that after May.
I wouldn't have thought there's a lot to do with that around this.
No, I know. Really, that needs to come as part of another safeguarding item, because it's about the safeguarding issues.
It's safeguarding that, isn't it?
So that needs to come when we have safeguarding next time, doesn't it?
What did you say they got on their next one?
On the next one is performance monitoring.
Sorry, not with us now. I'm looking at
adult services.
Yes.
Adult services. We've got it's all Kelly Gillins from the West Glamorgan regional group. We've got the update on the West Glamorgan transformation programme and the Wales Audit Office report on the integrated care fund.
That's what I was thinking of, the integrated care fund.
Yeah, that's right. So I've made a note to invite the adult services panel members to that one anyway, because that's on the adult services agenda.
So you invite us to that?
Invite child and family services to that meeting.
Right.
And then
can we bring domestic violence in with that?
Sorry?
Is there domestic violence in with that?
We haven't got domestic violence on the adult services agenda yet. It was only raised at the last meeting.
Right.
So what I suggest is that they don't have domestic violence, but it all comes to the child and family one in December, because we've got the Wales Audit Office report coming. Okay. And we services panel to that.
Right.
Yeah.
Because we haven't got the integrated care fund.
No.
Or with them.
Yeah. But I've already made a note of that.
Okay.
So we've already got the integrated care fund coming to adult services, so we won't have it coming to child and family, but I hadn't put it on anyway. So it doesn't save child and family anything. I'd already just put that child and family can go to the adult services. So it doesn't actually save anything, but with the domestic violence, it would save adult services having another item if they just come to the one that's coming to child and family.
I'm looking at the date now, the end of October, and we're looking middle of December. It's a question for Julie whether they can fit it in within 6 weeks, I guess.
Well, Julie just said that she could add in what Erica mentioned about domestic abuse, didn't she? Into that. She thought they could when they brought the Wales Audit Office report. She said when they bring the Wales Audit Office report on domestic abuse, she thinks they can weave in what Erica mentioned.
Okay.
Which was a breakdown of the collaboration around child and family services and adult services in terms of abuse. So that would work quite well, doing all that together, wouldn't it?
I would think so.
Yeah.
We'll see what she says, and
I'll check with her if she can do it. The only problem is they can't bring it to December. It's what we move around.
Aye. But if we don't do it December.
Yeah. Because that'll be a big item, won't it? Then probably.
Yes.
Well, we've got 3 items on December, but that's because we were so full anyway. But
well, I'm tempted to say at the moment that we drop off performance monitoring, or just send it out for report and say if you've got any questions, please submit.
Okay.
All right.
So drop that off.
What we'll do with performance monitoring, I suggest, is that circulate the report.
Circulate.
And to the members and saying, please go through these. If you've got any questions, then please come back with them. All right? Because it's a routine thing at the end of the day, isn't it? And it might be the meeting in March when we've only got something on the regional adoption service and we can have a proper look at it, if you know what I mean. Yeah?
Well, no, we have in
oh, sorry,
we haven't got a meeting in March. In the February meeting, we've got the youth offending service and we've got an update on CAMS.
I don't think we can change either of those.
No.
All right. The progress with CAMS needn't be too long, I don't think. But the youth offending service needs to be substantial, I would have thought. All right.
So performance monitoring, we're just going to drop off then until March, are we? That's a long time to leave it.
No, what I said was circulate the report.
Yeah, but not have it on the agenda.
Pardon?
But not bring it back as an agenda item then until we have it in March, is it?
Ask for it to be done written then rather than verbally, if you see what I mean. Ask your questions. Send the questions back into you so that you can send them back out to her and they can answer them then.
Okay. Come back with them.
Performance and we don't have to do this without consulting with the members, because we can say this is what we suggest that we do. Are you happy to do it that way? Right?
Yeah, okay.
Because I doubt if people are going to argue too much.
No. Okay, so performance monitoring would be done by circulation. Questions coming back, and then I'll send them to the head of service for answers. So we'd have the Wales Audit Office report, including what Erica asked for, and we'd invite the Adult Services panel for that. And we'd also have the briefing on the carers assessment, which was delayed from March.
Yes.
As the other item. Because we had the working group on it, didn't we? At the carers centre. We need to have the briefing on that.
Yes, because I know the bloke who was in charge of, or not heads up, the carers thing.
Yeah, I can't remember his name now. They because we said we'd invite them, didn't we? And we haven't had it yet.
No. No, he was asking us if we could change the date to it so he could attend, wouldn't he?
Yeah. And as it happened, it didn't go ahead anyway because the meeting didn't happen. It was supposed to come to either February or March, and we didn't have the meeting because of COVID.
Yeah.
So it's been ages anyway, isn't it? So we should really have that, and shouldn't we?
We should do. I'm not sure what they're going to do with it, I must admit.
No, I know. But we should have some update on it, shouldn't we?
We should.
If they've done anything, because that was last November. So that was before anything COVID happened. It was like 4 months before COVID happened. So they should have done something. Hopefully.
Yes.
So those 2 items for December then. The ones that came from the Scrutiny Work Planning Conference, the forced marriages, I think we should have that next time we have safeguarding.
Yep.
And then the other one was delivery of corporate priorities. And I was sort of thinking that would really be having a Q&A with a cabinet member, wouldn't it? Remember we had a Q&A with a cabinet member last year, didn't we?
We did.
Yeah, we haven't got one scheduled in this year because we were so short of time, but that would cover the delivery of corporate priorities one. But maybe we could leave that until we start the next year, maybe have that in June.
Yeah, yeah.
So we don't have to bring it into this 6 months.
Yeah. Who asked for the reasons why children become looked after?
They are all Mike Dirk, the 3 of them are that he asked for. So when we looked after, I don't know where it might have been as part of the dashboard performance monitoring report that these were sort of raised, and then he's asked for extra on them, and we've never actually done them.
I wonder if I'll have a word with Mike and say, look, in the circumstances at the moment, do you mind if we push these on a year or so?
Or so. Maybe we can at least add in one of them next year or something. Because it's not even, when we say next year, it's only like July, you know, it's not a year, is it? It's only like 8 or 9 months, maybe.
Yeah.
And maybe we could have one of them. I don't know, whichever he thinks is the most important. Do you want to have a word with him?
I have a word with him, I guess.
So it's those 3 things that he raised. There we are. I'll make a note then that you're going to speak to him.
Yeah, okay.
About that and see how important they actually are in this current climate. So I think, so that's okay then. So we're not adding anything else in. We're just going to invite the Adult Services panel to the December meeting for domestic violence. And we're going to see if we can do 1 budget meeting instead of 2 and do the budget and complaints for both at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
That sounds okay. There we are. I'll put that sort of in an email then and send it, those suggestions to you and Sue, was it? About the ones you put together.
Yes, just say we've had a chat. Right?
Yeah. And is she happy to do it for that?
I haven't got a telephone number at the moment. I say come back in.
You've what, sorry?
It's a pity she went off.
I've got her phone number. I've got her phone number.
See if you can get hold of her quickly then.
Hang on. I'll ask her to rejoin.
Yeah. Ooh. I can smell fried potatoes.
Nice. Hi Sue, it's Liz Jordan here. I'm okay. Just wondering, do you want to join back into the meeting again? Me and Paxton are just having a quick chat. Have you got a couple of minutes? Lovely. Okay. Okay. Bye. There we are.
Good.
Come back on now. Be quicker, get sorted now, isn't it?
Well, if you could do it like that, then it's easier, isn't it?
Yeah, at least there's a couple of things then, aren't there? There's 1 less meeting and there's 1 less item for adult services.
Aye.
So, I mean, it all helps, doesn't it?
It certainly does.
Yeah. Did I write that now? Yeah. Back on. So your tea's nearly ready, is it? Or it's cooking?
I think so.
My son will be down soon demanding his now. He emerges out of his room every so often for food.
And then goes back.
Yeah.
How was he?
14.
All right. Okay. So we're fully occupied electronically then.
Yeah. Well, he is very much into sport. He's been out every day in lockdown, cycling for a couple of hours.
All right.
He's very sporty, but then he spends the rest of the time on his Xbox. Yeah. Apart from eating me out of house and home.
Well, that's what it's for.
Yeah, I know. And cleaning up after him. Yeah.
I wouldn't know about things like that, would I?
No. I'm sure your wife would.
Right.
I think she's having to log back into a computer first.
Oh, sorry. I got so many bits of paper floating around here, apart from my iPad as well. Ridiculous.
I know. I've got, mind you, I do miss the being in the office and being able to print out papers all the time. I do like having a paper copy of things in front of me. Oh,
Yeah.
here she comes.
Hiya.
Hello.
All right.
Yeah, turn your telly on.
Oh, God. Is that on now?
Oh.
All right.
That's better.
Hello.
How are you? Well, it makes sense to do that together, mine, doesn't it? Domestic
Well, we've got a
violence.
couple of proposals for you. All right. Doesn't mean
Yes.
we're going to get married, but
Work proposals.
work
Right.
proposals, yeah. Well, you got the details of both of them there, Liz, so you carry on.
Okay. What I was going to say, we've got for adult services, we've got the Wales Audit Office report on the Integrated Care Fund coming to the next meeting anyway.
Right.
Okay, so what we suggest that's relevant to both is that the Child and Family Services panel members are invited to that meeting for that item.
Yeah.
Okay. And then in the December Child and Family Services panel meeting, we've got the Audit Office report on tackling violence against women.
Yes.
So like Julie Davis was saying, I think if she also deals with the points that Erica raised, I think we can cover domestic abuse for both panels at that meeting. So we'll invite the Adult Services panel members to that December meeting.
That makes sense.
Right?
Yes. There's
Okay.
a number of members that are on both anyway.
Yeah.
There are,
Yeah.
there are,
So I think
yeah.
that covers that.
And I don't think any of them will object to that. Not a problem.
No. The other suggestion we've got is that in February, you know, we always have the draft budget meetings.
Right.
What we're suggesting is that we have one social services budget meeting. So we deal with the budget proposals for both at the one meeting instead of two.
That makes sense.
Yes,
as well.
there's only one additional meeting. And at that meeting, we'll deal with the draft budget, but also deal with adult services complaints and also child and family services complaints, because we normally have them separately to each meeting. So
Right.
if we deal with that as well at that meeting, that covers
And
it
that's
for
in
both.
February then, that one.
Yeah, that's in February. So we do with both of those at the budget meeting in February.
Yes.
That takes out a couple of things. That's it then. I think they're the only ones that we can sort of see that are sort of relevant, you know, to both at the moment.
Well,
the other thing we're thinking of doing as well, Sue, as far as we're concerned, is with performance monitoring. That instead of bringing it to a meeting, we send the report out to members and ask them to raise any questions, which we will then refer back. So that's taken a bit of the load off the department again, I think.
yes. Yes.
Now, whether we want to do that at this stage with adult social services, because we're only just beginning to settle down the data coming through there, aren't we?
Well, with adult services, it seems an opportune time now to get it all sorted, doesn't it, you know?
Yeah.
Because it was a struggle to get them to give us anything going back a number of years now, but we are on track with it, aren't we?
Yeah.
So that makes sense as well with me. Yeah.
Maybe if we just do it for the next time that performance monitoring is supposed to come to each meeting, and then review it after that.
Yes.
Because as soon as they can, it'd be better if they start bringing it back to the meeting, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yes. Fine.
Okay, so maybe just for the next one of each meeting then, when we have performance monitoring, and then, as I say, you know, you can review it with them after that then and see if they can bring it back to the meeting then.
That's great. That's
okay.
The other possibility, right, well, I'm thinking about it now, is with these performance monitoring things, we send them out early to people and say, if you've got any questions, bring them back and they'll be answered there and then, but we're not going to go for the report in detail. Yeah, you can go for the report in detail yourselves, but we'll get answers. We'll let us know what the questions are. We report them, or Liz will report them to the appropriate head of service and they can answer them in.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
But in fairness to social services, they always highlight what we should be looking at, don't they? You know, the problems and that, so that makes sense to me. I find performance data quite confusing, I've got to be honest.
Well, I quite enjoy it, you see, don't I?
Yeah, I know you do. I think, oh God, what the heck does all this mean?
So Paxton, is that what we want to do for the next one? That you, rather than, so you do want it as an item on the agenda, but just for them to answer the questions that have been raised before the meeting?
Well, it does save time, doesn't it, to do it that way?
So,
and, you know, problems. It seems that we get the information.
If there are any
the officers to go through it then and just get random questions. If we can shorten that, it would be good, wouldn't it?
Yeah. So there we are. So we won't take it off for the next meeting then. We'll leave it on, but we'll we'll get the report out sooner and let panel members know that we'll only ask the questions that they have in advance. They'll answer those.
Yes. Will the staff be able to give us that information before, you know, that time before?
Well,
if it's still an item on the agenda, then they won't have to answer it in advance. They can answer it at the meeting, but they won't go through everything. They'll only answer the questions that are raised.
Yeah. Yes, yeah? If you want to give out that information to the panel members a little bit earlier, will that put stress on the staff?
Well, I don't think we will ask them to provide the answers any earlier. We'll just ask them to give the answers at the meeting.
No, the report I'm talking about.
Well, the report they're producing anyway.
Yes, but is it to the time of our meetings, or is it there for quite a while prior to our meetings?
They've already producing it for another meeting.
They'll be doing those reports on a monthly basis as regular.
Yeah, they're already produced anyway. They do them anyway.
So there's no pressure on
they can so they could just send us the latest one.
That's right.
Maybe a week or so before we put the agenda papers out.
Because they are circulated around the department as well, so the staff can see them as well. So.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. As long as there's not putting more pressure on staff, that's fine by me.
That's Simon's job to produce that, I think.
Yes.
All right. So do you think that's helping them then? So it'll still be an item on the agenda, but they won't have to go through it all. They'll only have to literally answer the questions that have previously been put to them.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yes, because you'll have those questions at hand to give them prior to the meeting anyway, won't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's fine. That's
so
fine.
I suppose at least it means then that it's less sort of time consuming in the meeting. So maybe we can add more into the meeting since we've got extra items.
I was just thinking that.
I thought you were. Especially for adult services, because I haven't put everything in for adult services yet, because we got a few extra ones, haven't we? But
yes, well, the extra ones is what I was thinking when we had tackling violence against women on children's services.
Yeah, so that would take that one off.
Yeah.
It just leaves, we've got this one we asked about the effect of COVID-19 on residential homes that we have to fit in.
Yes.
And isolation for elderly people. Is that as a result of COVID or just generally?
Well, I think it is actually. There was a problem prior for isolation for elderly care, and I think it's just exasperated the problem now.
Right, okay.
Right.
Okay, I'll draft those 2 work programs again then, and email to you both with what we've sort of decided.
Lovely.
And if you're happy with that, then we'll send out to I'll send it out to Dave Howes and the heads of service. Be sure they're happy with it, and then send round to the individual panel, each panel.
Members, this is what we intend doing.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Yes.
Yeah. Fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. There we are. Great.
Okey dokey.
Thank you very much, ladies.
Thanks very much.
Take care.
Okay.
Bye.
Hello.